Waiting for the whirling thing to just finish whirling round. We started. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Boston Town Area Committee. My name is Councillor Barry Pierpoint and I'm the chairman of this committee, and my vice chairman is Councillor Patsy Marson to my right. Our housekeeping rules are as follows. The restroom facilities are available for ladies on this floor and halfway down the main stairwell for the gentlemen. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, officers will escort everyone out of the building to the nearest fire safety point in the car park. Will all persons addressing this meeting please do so through the microphone system at all times. The meeting is being recorded. Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain. If the behaviour persists, they'll be asked to leave the meeting. We'll now move into the part one of this evening's meeting and we'll firstly address the preliminary items. Can I have apologies for absence, Karen, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have one apology from Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you, and noted. Now I'll sign the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of July. Everybody in favour for me to sign the meeting? Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I forgot to give Councillor R.A. Ambath's apologies. Please accept them.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the meeting minutes signed and noted about Councillor. Right, update on actions from the minutes of the last meeting. I'm going to ask Mr. Perry. Oh, sorry, apologies. To sign the minutes of the previous meeting, I should have mentioned, I would advise there's an amendment to the copy I'm signing, and the one on the website. At the bottom of page 4 in the recommendation, the time has been changed from 1899 hours, which is a new time for me, to 1800 hours. So that's an amendment. Apologies about that. I didn't read it in red. I skipped it. Right, update on actions from the minutes of the last meeting. Mr. Perry, any updates, please? Phil?
There are no updates, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I receive any declarations of interest from members? Councillor Marson.
I'd like to declare an interest due to being LHP tenant, but I'll be keeping an open mind.
Thank you very much. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. When it comes to the small grants, I am a director of Centrepoint Outreach. I'll sit in the room if I may, but I'll keep quiet and I will not vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Austin.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
I can't remember your name, Neil.
I'm also LHP president as well down Scareback Ward.
Thank you very much and noted. Any more declarations of interest? Councillor Wood.
Thanks, John. I don't know whether it is, but I'm a member of Blackfriars Theatre and Arts Centre, an ordinary member. It does appear in the report, the next report on, so perhaps I ought to mention that, because I might want to speak in support of it. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for declaring your interest. Right, there's public questions. Do we have any public questions at all?
No questions, Chairman.
Does anybody attending in the public gallery wish to address it? There's not. No, thank you. Concludes the preliminary items. We'll now go on to part 2 of the meeting. Our first item this evening is the BTAC Small Grant Scheme, which is on page 7 of your pack and agenda. And I'll ask Maddie Eyre to present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, lovely. My report this evening concerns presenting the small grant applications made to the BTAC Grant Working Group on the 4th of September 2023 for endorsement by this committee. I will go through the applications that were received in round 2, and all recommendations from the working group have been provided on table 2, which has been circulated around the table this evening. There were 2 eligible applications received in round 2 of the small grant scheme, and the details of each applicant are supplied at table 1 of the report. We have had an applicant of Citizens Advice Mid Lincolnshire. They've applied to the small grant scheme for £1,000 contribution towards the cost of telephone translation services to support BTAC clients whose first language is not English. The working group decision on this application was that it's a valuable service to the community, and the working group agreed to award the full amount requested, with monitoring to include how many BTAC residents have been supported as a consequence of the funding awarded. The second application we received was from Centrepoint Outreach to the small grant scheme, and it was £500 contribution towards the purchase of food for their Cook Along With Us sessions, and the working group agreed to award the full amount requested. So total funding to be awarded in this round will be £1,500 from the small grant scheme, which will leave £13,644.09 to carry forward into round 3. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maddie. Can I ask the committee to ratify the 2 decisions made? All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Maddie, for attending, and safe journey home. I'm pleased to welcome our guests this evening from Lincolnshire Housing Partnership, Mr. Murray MacDonald, who's the Chief Executive, Mr. Anthony Head, the Chairman, and Mr. Mark Coupland, the Executive Director for Customers. I'm going to ask them now to say a few words. Thank you.
Are we good? So I failed at the first hurdle, look, and not managed to work the IT, so apologies. And I was just about to say, actually, so thank you, Chair. For the record, my surname is Reed. I've been called far worse things than Head before, but yeah, just for the purpose of the records, yeah.
I sincerely apologise.
No, don't worry, it's fine.
Thank you.
So. Thank you on behalf of Murray and Mark, who joined me this evening for the invite. It's actually been 18 months, or just over, since we were last sat in front of you, but I'm very aware there's lots of new faces since then. We had a very positive meeting then. I'm sure we will tonight as well. I also wanted to thank you all for the questions that you sent through in advance, and hopefully we've been able to provide comprehensive answers for you. I'm sure we'll come on to those in a little while. I think the nature of the questions reflect the fact that on occasion we get things wrong. We're very proud of what we do for the majority of our customers, but on occasion we do get things wrong, and those things are usually in the areas of high visibility because everybody sees it, such as grounds maintenance, and grass cutting is one of the things that has featured in their questions this evening, and also repairs. And perhaps it's just worth reflecting that, you know, when a repair goes wrong, it's imperative that we put it right clearly for the customer that is involved, our tenant, because it's the most important thing for them. But by way of context, we actually deal with about 50,000 repairs a year. So when you see a repair, clearly, actually, it's reflective of hopefully a very low volume of repair complaints that you see. But we deal with a significant number throughout the year, the vast majority of which goes smoothly, and our customers are happy with it. We have it attached as part of the pack, actually, the tenant satisfaction measures that we are now required to measure and will report on from April 2024. And you'll see that actually, generally speaking, they are positive, and in a lot of cases above the sector median and upper quartile performances. So we do recognise we get things wrong. We try to put it right as quickly as we can. Overall, we do, you know, the best that we can do. I know that you will have seen the communication that came out 2 weeks ago today about the potential merger that we have entered into. And we're at a very early stage, but I know that you'll be keen to know some more about that. And I'm just going to ask Murray now if he can perhaps give you a little bit more of context and exactly the background to why we are thinking that we should proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, so a little bit of background about the proposed merger, and it's important to put it in context at the moment that it's a proposal and it's out for consultation. This forms one of many elements that we will be listening to feedback from our customers, our tenants, but also critically our stakeholders, and in particular for LHP, our 2 parent organisations, Boston Borough Council and North East Lincolnshire Council. And that's important because we gave a commitment, for those of you as old as I am, we gave a commitment when we merged with Grimsby 5 and a bit years ago now, that we would maintain and enhance our presence in Boston and the villages around Boston. And that's what we've done. So we still run all of our services in the Boston area from Boston. We still employ several hundred staff from the Boston area, or just over 100 staff from the Boston area who live and work in this area. So we're not talking about a fundamental change, because Ongo, the partner that we're talking to, is the stock transfer organisation from Scunthorpe. So its heritage is very similar, its ethos is very similar, and its reason for existing, which is to serve the borough, the district, the council, the unitary council of North Lincolnshire, and the residents, citizens, and being accountable to its political body, is exactly the same as LHP is responsible and accountable to Boston Borough, the citizens who live here, and you as their representatives. So the starting point is not we're diversifying off into something that is unknown, that you might be saying, well, they're a big commercial outfit, they're based in Manchester or something, they don't know us. This is a Lincolnshire, Greater Lincolnshire centred proposal. And that's really important for the reason I said that we are passionate about maintaining our presence, not just in Greater Lincolnshire, but specifically in this context in Boston. So nothing that I speak about in the next few minutes should give you any doubt to our commitment to be here, to be present here, and to be accountable and responsible for you and to you and the people that you represent. So why would we look at a strategic alliance or a merger with another organisation? Well, I think you probably need no introduction to why strategic alliances are beneficial. They give you scale and they give you size. They give you scale and they give you resilience, and at a level that is difficult to do when you're smaller. Particularly, it gives you efficiencies. But in the context of three charities, which are two charities coming together, it's important to recognise that efficiencies don't go anywhere other than back into the communities that we serve. So as a charity, there's no shareholding, there's no money leaving the system. So any efficiencies that we create are solely there to improve the services that our tenants and our customers receive. The commitment is very much to Lincolnshire. So again, not thinking, we might make some efficiencies and that'll allow us to go off and do something in the home counties, Cornwall or Northumberland. No, this is about Greater Lincolnshire and keeping that focus. And Ongo and LHP are both very committed to place, which is important to us. And you'll know, those of you who work on other schemes in Boston, how involved we are, whether it's in ASB, whether it's in regeneration, whether it's in the environment. You'll find our staff working with your staff hand in glove. So presuming this happened, and that's a decision that will be taken by both boards around about Christmas or early New Year, in light of the consultation with tenants and with partners such as yourself. What might you invest those in those savings back into? Well, clearly, like you, we listen to our customers all the time. You feedback to us very much what that is. So the things that we know are really important, Anthony's spoken about it, the repairs service. So one of the benefits to LHP and therefore the customers, tenants in Boston and the villages would be the improved repairs service that Ongo already has. They have an online booking system. They have video diagnostics so that a customer in their house on the phone can show their smartphone. Most of us have smartphones. I know not everybody does, but most of us do now. And literally show the person at the other end of the phone what's going on. And because a lot of these issues we want to try and get fixed straight away, you can then talk through. We can actually draw on the screen, which comes up on the smartphone, like that augmented reality. So you're looking at what it's seeing. This is the bit you need to turn, or this is the press, particularly things like restarting boilers when they switch themselves off in the winter, or they depressurize. We think that's a really big win for our customers, something we plan to do as LHP, but probably is 3 to 5 years away. We think that would be something we could bring in much more quickly. It also gives us at scale the ability to bring more of our maintenance in-house. Obviously, at our size, currently at LHP, there are some specialisms that we simply are not big enough to hold that work. Things like roofing, for instance. Bringing that in-house creates more local jobs and creates the opportunity for us to build in more apprenticeship opportunities. So it's a win for us. It's efficient because we're not paying subcontractors profits, but it's also good for our community in that there's more jobs and more training opportunities. You know, from our current investment plans that one of the areas that we have had to cut back on, as most housing associations have, is building new homes. And that quite rightly, we've done that, and we're quite proud of the fact we've done that because we've invested that money in bringing the homes we've got up to a higher standard. And you'll know from the press around about, there's been some horror stories, thankfully not in any of our properties, but there's a lot of work to be done here in Boston, the villages, but also in Grimsby and Immingham and Cleethorpes. Coming together would give us that extra efficiency, which would allow us to increase the number of new properties. And I know particularly in some of the rural areas, getting access to low cost affordable housing for people starting out on the housing ladder and some of our younger residents, really difficult. Not just our younger residents, obviously everybody, but there's a real demand there. And of course, in some of the inner town regeneration you're doing as well. And being able to do that as build-led rather than just buying stuff that house builders are doing and we take some on an estate, but actually being able to work with you to plan from the ground up, what would you want building there and how would we do it? It's something that we would think we could bring forward if the merger was to go ahead. Looking more widely, one of the things we've no doubt will touch on grass cutting, but one of the things that we know and you know is the state of neighbourhoods is really important. It's not just, you know, we can create houses and we can hopefully support people to turn them into homes, but if they're not in a good neighbourhood, if there's antisocial behaviour, if the place isn't looking clean and tidy, people don't feel confident to thrive, to be the best that they can be. So we know as community-based organisations, investment in those services is really important. We'd like to have a conversation with you about if those efficiencies did come through, which, you know, currently we wouldn't be this far down a conversation if we didn't think they were. How would they be best targeted? So community support services. You know, we talk about antisocial behaviour because that's the sharp end, but a lot of that preventative work that we do day in, day out with you as ward councillors, with the other charities and support. You've talked about CAB earlier, Age Concern, the other groups that we work with in communities to stop those issues even escalating is really important. And of course we've been negligent not to talk about the carbon reduction agenda, the environment, and the role that we can play there in some of our areas and neighbourhoods in making them greener and more sustainable. And finally, the area that we've explored is providing opportunities for our customers and tenants. Again, and this sounds like very much one way, this is a merger of equals. There's as many things that Ongo's chief exec will be talking to their council about that they want, that they think we'll be bringing to the party. But one of the benefits that Ongo has is from the day they were formed, they created a charitable subsidiary, a foundation, which puts £1 million a year into communities, a bit like your small grants. We think we can probably double that and roll it across the whole. I'm not making any commitments to the size, but that's the intent that we're trying to model through. And why is that important? It's important because it can do things that we as a landlord can't do directly, such as Ongo currently run an employment agency, not necessarily to employ their own staff, but to work with tenants in communities to make them job ready, and then they liaise with employers in their community and place them in either as apprentices or junior staff, and then support them. Because we all know that if communities are economically vibrant, then they are more stable places to be. So there's things like that. They also were able to build and run a community centre, and I think very interestingly kept open, actually bought and are now running the local post office, because it was going to be closed, and the post office was an anchor in that community. It's where people went. It was the only place left where people would go and do their transactions, perhaps where they could pay off their prepaid cards. I was going to say get their pension, but I know it isn't done that way. But there's still a number of community things that bring people together around somewhere like a post office or a library or whatever it might be. And that's a very difficult thing to do directly as a landlord, but through a community foundation, it gives you opportunities to talk with partners like yourself, talk with communities about what would make a difference in your place beyond the landlord services that we do day in, day out, which you know a great deal about. You see the ones when we get it wrong. Hopefully we can show you more often the ones we get right, and the work we do with you in partnership across a whole range of schemes. So in terms of the time scale, this is the beginning of the journey. We're running this right the way through till Christmas now, listening to feedback. We'll be undertaking a lot of listening with our partners, with our tenants, feeding that all back, trying to understand what the sentiments are. If this is to go ahead, what would be the asks? What is it that you hold precious that you wouldn't want to let go of? And what things, perhaps the things I've spoken about or other things you might think of that you would say, well, actually, if this allowed you to do more, what we would really want is this thing. So we're all ears, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murray. Thank you very much, Anthony. Before we take questions, I just want to say thank you to all the members around the table for supplying all the questions, and all the answers have been supplied by LHP. What I'm proposing to do is take questions on what the two gentlemen have spoken about, and also off the answers off the back of the responses. So if you want to have a question or follow up on the questions that you've already provided, or what the two gentlemen have spoken about, then please raise your hand and we'll go from there. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've just got a question. It's linked to maintenance and to grounds maintenance. There's a property not too far from where I live that has excessive ivy growth growing over a wooden fence. I do a little bit of voluntary work in the area, and I spoke to the lady who is a tenant of LHP about the fact that the ivy growth was so excessive it was actually blocking half of the pavement, and also was becoming a trap for litter. And she said that she wasn't able to remove it. So I agreed that I would remove it for her. And I started to sort of snip away at this ivy with the intention of getting rid of it for her, when it was clear that the ivy was actually holding up the fence. And reversely, so I sort of stopped sort of halfway through the work and said to her, I really can't take this ivy away, because if I do take the ivy away, the fence is going to fall down and it'll create an even greater hazard than having the ivy on the fence. So I just wonder, in terms of grounds maintenance, what the curtilage issues are around a job like that, because it's been going on now for 2 years and it hasn't yet been resolved.
I'm very pleased to have Mark with us, who's our Director of Operations, and I'm sure he will be able to give you some insight on that.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. It's a fair and valid point, and appreciate the work you've done in attempting to resolve it. The grounds maintenance contract specification is quite narrow and would not extend to ivy on the fence. It is simply cutting of the grass, quite frankly. Whether now or at the end of the meeting, if you want to provide me with that address, and I will look at that with pleasure. It's also worth noting that we've just launched our fencing programme and across the business, and that is part of the commitment we've got to basically renewing fences, because we recognise that over time traditional construction timber fences have just decayed, fallen by the wayside. Customers have sort of made do with the fencing, and we've not had a programme up until this year to deliver the fencing improvements, which we've started. We're also working with our customer scrutiny panel in terms of what that specification looks like as well. So we've started on site to get the ball rolling, but also following up in terms of the design and the layout. So yeah, I'll gladly take that away and we'll look at that.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert, and thank you, Mark. Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd like to thank the three gentlemen for being here. I was at the meeting, Anthony, 18 months ago, and it was at that meeting that I discovered the special magical email address that you have for elected members, and I coveted that and used it to great effect. And I hope you've noticed that since May, since the election, it's been used a lot more because the team are on it. But I would like to thank you. It's not my experience, as in the questions, that there is a delay to responses. I'd like to commend you that I've always had very speedy responses to my inquiries, and I'd like to thank you for that. I don't always get the response of one, maybe the resident doesn't, but you know, you are on it, and I think that's a great facility that you have for elected members. So thank you. Now on to your presentation, Murray. It all sounds wonderful. It sounds that there's a lot of positives could come from a merger, and we are a lived experience of that, having created a partnership with two other local authorities. But I'd like to ask you about the house building. I'm really excited about that prospect, and obviously it's much needed. Would you comment then on, if you were to enter into the merger with ONGO, how that would look, given that you're in two very different geographical areas of the Greater Lincolnshire area? Would there be anything in writing to say what kind of split a new housing programme would look like, that every time you built a house in Boston, you'd also build one in Scunthorpe? I know it might not be that regulated, but that, you know, to sort of give us a cast iron guarantee that we wouldn't be the Cinderella partner there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dorian.
I think it's a very good question, and I think it's a question that firstly any future organisation's board would have sovereignty. So anything I say now, you know, as a paid officer, would be in the hands of future, just as it is in your partnership with your elected members. It's a very similar question to the one that I was asked in a room not far away from here when we were talking about merging with Grimsby. How can you commit to not reducing the spend here, not reducing the number of staff, not reducing your presence? And I gave a commitment then that we wouldn't, and we haven't. Would I have given that in writing? Absolutely. It's 30%, 20%, no. And I think the answer remains the same now, for the simple reason that there will be times when the community need in Boston is for a lot of investment. And what you don't want is to find yourself in a position where somebody has signed up to something that says, well, the Boston tenants only pay 30% or 20% of the total income of this organisation, so they'll only ever get 20% of the spend. Might sound now guaranteeing that 20% as a good thing, but if we had a scheme down here that needed for 1 year, half of all the development was down here, and it was the right thing to do for the community and the right thing to do for the business, we wouldn't want to be in a position to have to say, well, actually, we can't do it. Could you go and bring somebody else to do it for you? So I can give you a commitment that our intention is to be fair and equitable and to keep Boston as one of our three, in that circumstance, really important places that we would be here, part of the conversation and doing the right thing. Can I say here and now it'll be X%? I can't. I don't know, Anthony, as our chair, whether you want to comment on that.
No, I think that's a very fair answer. I think the only thing I'd add to that is that at the moment, LHP has quite a limited development programme. As Murray said, we basically buy some Section 106, as they're called, houses from developers, and it's a relatively low number annually. And part of that reason is, as Mark has already alluded to, the board made a decision last year that we needed to spend more on existing homes, so a fencing programme, paths, looking at the community areas and so on. And actually in diverting or committing that expenditure over the 30-year lifetime of our business plan, which is what we're required to look at, it's meant there's always a trade-off, because we've only got limited financial resources, the same as any organisation, and that trade-off is we can build fewer or buy fewer new properties because of the investment in the newer stock. Ongo in a slightly different position. They've got a much bigger build programme, and we're hoping, or the newly merged organisation, if it goes ahead, actually by putting the two together, you do get a stronger financial, more resilient organisation, which, if it's got greater financial capacity, means that you can look more to growth as well as investing in your existing stock, which is what's really important for our current customers, not just, they're less interested in our future customers, aren't they? They want to know what we're doing to their homes.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you. Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. I was on this council from 2011 to 2019, and during that period of time, I had a constant stream of people concerned about the quality of the cutting of the grass. And one of the very last complaints I got before the electorate, in its infinite wisdom, decided not to re-elect me, was a question on a complaint about the grass cutting on the play area at Windsor Bank. Lo and behold, when I got re-elected, one of the first complaints I got was a complaint about the grass cutting on Windsor Bank and the play area. And I think it applies throughout the borough, but that's in my ward. So, complete with pictures of some very poorly cut grass and quite a poor condition of the area. You have put down some matting under one of the swings since then, which is good. But it's just a simple question. Yeah, we're now talking, it's 12 years since I was elected, and you don't seem able to cut grass yet. Surely the technology must be there, that lets you cut the grass and preferably pick it up or cut it more often so that you don't get enormous lumps of grass. I mean, yeah, I know it's difficult. I know every year is a bad year for grass cutting, and so on. But yeah, I'm just thinking, surely there must be an answer. And then my second question is one of the ones I had on the paper here. I'm surprised you don't have tenants or residents on your board. Is that now the norm in housing associations? I mean, the only housing association I have connections to is Sohar in South Oxfordshire, which I helped set up. I was on the council then. There, the board is 12, and 5 of the board members are being technical residents. They're not necessarily tenants. So I mean, they might be living with the parent. So they actually don't necessarily have a tenancy in their own right. But surely that would give a better voice to your tenants, because part of the things I often hear, it seems to be that tenants feel they're not being listened to. And surely if you had tenants or maybe a better structure for tenants, local tenants boards or something. Is that something does Ongo have tenants on their board? Oh, no. So I mean, obviously this is not a game I'm involved in, but I just feel it would help if you increased. Again, here in Boston, one of the problems we have is here for far too long, the authority here has been top down. We've not listened to our communities. We've not acted on what they want. And the community here, I think, showed it by electing a whole load of new councillors to show that. And I just think you do need to look at the way you communicate and take on board what your tenants want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that really insightful journey over the last 6 or 7 years as well. And apologies that you've not seen that improve for 12 years. Sorry.
Certainly on the grass maintenance or the grounds maintenance, has the technology improved? It probably has. I think the challenge we always have is that element of the service is the service chargeable element to customers. So of course, if customers want the Rolls-Royce service, then there's an extra cost in that, and more often than not, and especially with the cost of living impact, we've seen customers actually struggling around there. It's fair to say that our management of the contractors has slipped, definitely, and certainly with yourself, and we've had various exchanges over the months around that. We reached the point with our contractors quite recently where we served performance notices on those contractors, and equally we were more robust in our approach. So rather than taking the word of the contractor in terms of the quality, that we have enabled staff, they're working, probably spending 80% of their time out on the patch. So we made sure that those staff, our own teams, were out overseeing some of that delivery of the service. And we'd always welcome ward members to attend on those estate visits also, just to see what that condition and quality looks like. So we've been more robust, and we've taken that stance probably over the last 2 or 3 months. So of course, in the height of the cutting season, really, as it starts tailing off. You're absolutely right. If we could increase the frequency of cuts, then we would, but of course there's an additional cost for doing that. So that's the balance that we always have. We always put that forward to customers, and it's ultimately the customer's choice in terms of the level of service that they want to receive. Irrespective of the level of service, it's the quality of the service that's the challenge. And that's where, as I say, we've put a lot more robust management around that process, and we hope and expect to see some improvements. Admittedly, as the cutting season comes to an end now, there will be a need to make one final push so that the quality just sort of tidies over for the next coming months.
Councillor Gleeson, carry on.
Just before the next bit. To what extent is the difficulty that obviously now, say in my ward, we've got Woad Farm, which is the bigger. I mean, how many of the houses do you actually own? And how many of the houses you don't own actually are now do pay a service charge? Is that part of the difference now is that you now only own what, 4, whatever, 10 is it, maybe? And of course you've not got, is that now that is the difficulty? You're responsible for large areas where you actually don't own many of the properties.
Yes, that is a concern because we have that land in perpetuity, and some of those residents have a right to buy or a right to acquire, and many of them have exercised that. Our board took a decision many years ago now that effectively we wouldn't penalise those people who chose to stay as tenants by continually splitting the pie by fewer and fewer people. So what we've done is we took a view that there were X number of people who benefited from that grass at stock transfer. And since then, if any of those properties have been bought, we'll either try and service charge, which we do now. If you right to buy or right to acquire one of our properties now, you will continue to pay the service charge. But if that was done prior to that, at the tail end of the local authority ownership or in early days of ours, we effectively now take the cost of that, so that it doesn't just end up, you could end up with a situation, couldn't you, where you have one tenant who could be paying for the whole of the grounds maintenance and a children's play park, which just doesn't seem fair. So we have adopted that approach, but Mark's right. The key issue is cost, quality, and timeliness, and we don't get it right all the time. It's not just a Boston issue, it's every local authority we work in, and it's not just our grass cutting, it's many others as well. We have the county council doing some, and we have councils doing bits as well, and sometimes that causes confusion. But I would urge as many councillors as possible to take up the opportunity to go on the estate walkabouts, because that feeds directly. You've got the magic email, but every estate walkabout has an agreed action plan at the end of it, which the people who go on those then hold us to account to, a bit like your minutes of your meetings. At the next time we do it, we go through it. Has this been done? What's happened? If it hasn't, why not? And of course, as ward councillors, if you then find out things are being promised and not done, you can come back straight through to Mark and myself on the email, and you'll get a response.
So do you have tenants on the walkabout?
Yes.
Yeah.
We invite tenants and we invite ward councillors, we invite the local policing, and we invite any other interested partners that live or work in that area. Some are very well attended, some less so. I think Anthony is going to come back on the second part.
So, good question about tenant representation, which I guess is really what it's about. In simple terms, no, there is no requirement for the board to have any tenant board members anymore. I think historically, well before my time, some organisations did have that, but I think it's quite rare now across the whole sector. But it is an interesting question, and if I can tell you a little story, soon after I'd started, we went out to raise, well, we actually raised over £100 million to invest back into the properties. And as part of that, we had to do an investor roadshow to 7 different institutional investors, one of which basically said to me, "You've got a very male, pale and stale board, Anthony, haven't you?" And actually, she was right, because at that time, there were 7 people of kind of a bit like me and two ladies. I can now tell you that I have a much more diverse board in terms of gender, sexuality and colour. That in itself actually is important, but the biggest thing that's important to me is the skills that everybody brings. So we are very much a skills-based board, because I need people with areas of expertise in different things to make sure we've got everything covered. So, you know, somebody that knows what they're talking about on maintenance, somebody that knows what they're talking about on finance, and so on. So I think the key thing for me is looking at that skills. But one of the things that we have done, or there's 2 things that we've done to try and develop the board further. One is we've launched a trainee board member programme, and we're just over 1 year into that now. The second thing we did is recruit, and we tried to recruit 2. And in fact, anybody that was here 18 months ago may have remembered me at the end of the meeting saying we're about to try and recruit 2 customers to sit on our operations committee to give us an insight, so that when we say something like grass cutting, don't we give a great service, they can turn around and go, well, that's not what I see. Now, actually, we were only successful in recruiting 1, unfortunately, but Jerry brings a really different insight to that committee. The wider point about listening and engagement, I'm just going to ask Mark if he can just give you a quick overview of all the things that we do to try and get that voice of the customer, so that we can listen and change and improve services.
Thanks, Anthony. Yes, so probably a year ago, certainly 12 months, we launched a revised and brand new customer engagement framework. So we recognised that there were a few gaps. That comprised of our customer scrutiny panel, which we've always had. So we've refreshed that. We've recently launched a complaints panel. So they meet every quarter. So obviously we get a number of complaints each month. They review at their request a handful of complaints each quarter, completely independently. Was that the right outcome? Was that the right response? So we get that extra, I guess, scrutiny around the complaints process to make sure we're not missing a trick, to make sure that actually we are considering the customer. All our policies now are shared with customers before we actually approve them. So we make sure that it's the right policy, that it reads right, that it will land with what customers need. We did some work around our antisocial behaviour, which was just traditionally difficult. Our performance and satisfaction around ASB was challenging. The customer's expectation was challenging. And I think the trouble at that time was we were trying to be all things to all people. So we were trying to be social workers, we were trying to be the police, we were trying to be everybody. And we went back out to customers that had been through the ASB process, including those dissatisfied customers, and actually said, with a blank piece of paper, we spent probably 2 days in a room locked away. Tell us what the policy needs to look like. What was your experience? Where did we fail? The overriding factor was you didn't manage our expectations. We reported an incident, and not deliberately, but the way we operated led the customer to believe that we were going to sort it out. And actually, it could have taken 6 months. We might not have been able to sort it out, But just by really being clear what our definition of antisocial behaviour is, and what we will deal with, and what we actually will refer, because that's the important thing. It's not about what we won't deal with. It's where we will clearly engage with the police or social workers or whatever to actually take a more holistic view to the problem, rather than typically signposting, just saying it's them over there. So what we've seen on the back of that was the first piece of work we really did, where we actually just said, okay, customers, over to you. You tell us how you want the service to look and how you want it to operate. And we've launched that, and you know, I'm not sure whether it's in this TSM's data, but we've seen that satisfaction increase, partly because we're managing those expectations, and we're very, very clear from the outset what we can do and what we can't do. And customers are responding to that, recognising that, okay, that's fine. I now know what I can expect from you. I now know if we need to involve a third party and what that looks like. And moving away from very traditional signpost service, which was, we can't help you, but it's those lot over there. But actually ensuring there's pathways in there that we can actually push that through, joined up with the customer, rather than them having to navigate their own way through. So again, all our policies, all our customer facing policies go to our engaged customers. And we've just recently launched, probably, where was it? June time, I think it was, Your Voice platform, which is a digital platform that enables us to reach out to engaged customers and say, we're thinking of doing this, what do you think? You know, and very much if they say, well, that's a non-starter, then we'll tailor that. When we moved away from the Decent Homes Plus standard to the Decent Homes, we consulted with customers around before we went out, we brought Jerry and a number of customers in to help us design the document. All too often we produce something and push it out, but actually we involve customers at the editorial stage, really, to say, well, actually that I don't understand what that says. Okay, you tell us what we should say. So yeah, it's moved on at a pace. We will shortly be going out to consult with customers formally around the merger, asking for views, and again we'll take the same approach. We will draft that document and then we will share it with customers, that are engaged customers, to feedback before we launch that, just to make sure it covers the questions that maybe we've not thought about.
Thank you, Mark.
Can I just come quickly back? That sounds really good, actually. Maybe there's some lessons we could learn here. Do you get good engagement from the Boston area?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. I think that there's a desire to engage with us, and I think there's a recognition on my part that there might have been some apathy in the past few years around customer engagement. The customers felt that they weren't being listened to. We know we've done some work around our main service, which is repairs, and we've just been embedding that new service in. But we knew there was some frustration from customers. Our customer engagement framework was tired. Was tired, so we saw our service improvement panels just drift away because they weren't necessarily getting the information they wanted in the format they wanted. We were very much, well, there's the business information. There you go, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. Actually, they didn't want all the numbers. Doesn't mean anything. So yeah, I think the launch has been really positively received. We talk with the Your Voice platform. We sort of promoted it before it went live, and I think we got 100 odd customers signing up before it went live. And you know, we wouldn't have got that probably 18 months ago.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to move on. Councillor Savigan.
Thank you, Chair. Just curiosity, do you advise your tenants that they need to look after their inside gardens? Let's say like my Gilbert situations here, if there is an old lady or so, is there anyone who's helping? If not, is there like yearly checks, who's checking on the gardens? And if not, is it possible, if they're not using the garden, just to rent out as allotments? And as well, is there kind of support team for elderly people who cannot pay the maintenance? Is there any plan for that as well?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. We recognise through our recent launch of our independent living strategy, that more people live at home and want to stay longer. But as they get older, they struggle to maintain that home for numbers, not just the responsibilities that we have through maintenance, but just general upkeep of the home. We work in partnership and we work very closely with local organisations such as Age UK, as Murray touched on earlier. And we've just started doing some work again with Age UK to understand what level of support and different initiatives they can bring in. We have a caretaker service in Boston, as we do in Grimsby. That's quite low level, but part of that is some of the work we want to be really clear where those vulnerable customers are. So going back to your point about do we visit properties? Yes, we do. Each year we visit properties. We spend 80% of our frontline staff's time out on properties. It's a very targeted approach. So we will look at that demographic on the wards or in the patches and think, actually, what's going on there? Because again, taking the point made earlier, it's far too easy to just walk past something that you're familiar with. So those estate walkabouts with fresh eyes, those estate audits that we do highlight some of the challenges. And then actually it's a knock on the door. It's finding out what's going on behind that door, because often it's other things other than overgrown gardens. And it's about being curious and just finding out what's going on. And then whether it's talking to family members, talking to other agencies, just getting that support in place. But there is a real commitment to understand that actually it's supporting people in their home as best we can.
So as well, if somebody is not looking after their garden, is it possible, let's say, to rent it or do it as allotment just to get some money and just not to leave it as overgrown garden?
Not sure. Yeah, it depends, to be fair. That wouldn't be our preferred route at all. We'd want to try and understand what was going on in the property. The more sort of push towards communal gardens is something that we're very attuned to in this area. We've done something recently in Grimsby around a communal allotment. It talks very much to people being active, healthy eating, cost of living and everything else. It ticks a number of boxes actually for communities. And we talked earlier about the investment in communities in place. Then I see very strongly that communal garden area allotments as being a thing that's something we'd want to take forward. Yeah, we wouldn't necessarily look to remove a garden from somebody. We'll try and understand what was going on there first.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. I have only 2 questions. I will talk about your responses and, from my experience, from my side. I think on Angela Avenue, we had number 4951. Last year, I think their toilets were smashed somehow. And they were presented with a porter loos, one with 49, they had the loo. 51, they had the shower, and it was a container in front of their house for several months. And I think they were very late in response. I got involved with the matter, which was sorted within a month, I was very pleased to see that. It was another house, they had a leak on Porcher Way. I don't remember the number, I think number 1 on the left, but that one was dealt with as quick as possible. And I see that the responses weren't quick. So I feel very bad about that. For especially 49 and 51, they were the best kept houses in the area. Green grass. Yes, at the back. Yes, and that should have been probably sorted out within a month. But they went through the winter with that roof collapse and with the port lows. So anyway, that's what I think. My experience wasn't very good. I remember 2 years ago when I talked to my fellow here, my gentleman in front of me, we talked about Ingram Road and we talked about Kime Road and some of other houses, especially as well in Angela Road, is the fences at the front of the houses, they pose a big health and safety hazard. They're all broken, metal, nails, and we talk about them to remove them or renew them. And my suggestion probably will be easy to remove them and use them as a parking for the cars that will give more space in the road. In my opinion, it could be done. So it hasn't been done. And my second point, which is I think is completely different now from the housing. I do believe in our ward, me and Patsy, we have Hinton Court. Hinton Court is usually a care home. And to my surprise once, I went there and I found 2 young men wearing black with bicycles. One of them was completely drunk and they were getting in. When he came out, I asked him, do you live here? He said, yes, I have a mental issue, so I'm living here. So I was worried, and I think I did contact LHP. about the situation and the safeguard and well-being of the elderly people living there. That's one thing. The second thing is in the word of my council fellow Andy Azart and Sandeep Ghosh, is Witham Ward. It has been infested with bats just lately, and I think it has been sprayed, and they're asking the residents, which is elderly people again, I think they have 30.
Councillor Danny, I think we've got about 15 different questions on
No,
that
just
there.
two, is the care homes
I know.
and the fences. So what are you doing about the care homes? Because we shouldn't forget that people who lives in your care homes, I mean, you should have, if we are building good communities, you should look after them as well. I wasn't long, Mr. Chairman.
I was timing.
You're picking on me, that's
Too
fine.
long.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. So just as a point of clarity, we don't have care homes. We have one extra care scheme, which is Mayfield. Sorry, Hinton Court is a sheltered scheme, and so just for clarity, it's not a care home. But so appreciate that point. The criteria for Hinton Court, for Witham Court, is very much around customers that are over 55 or have associated needs. So you will see in those schemes mixed age groups. We are minded always of the ages that go into those properties, and always assured that there is an appropriate risk plan taken and any support plan that's taken to make sure that those individuals are supported in those addresses. It's fair to say Hinton Court, because of the location of the scheme, can be quite challenging and has been quite challenging from a antisocial behaviour, from a nuisance behaviour point of view. But again, we've taken a more robust approach to not just the management of the customers in those properties, but also the allocations. So basically taking a more considered approach when we move people in. It's also, because of the location of the scheme, not uncommon for non-residents to frequent that scheme in terms of acquaintances coming in and out of that scheme. So it's very difficult to identify those. So any information that you can either provide yourself or through your own contacts in that scheme would be much appreciated. Thank you.
I think it's also fair to say one of the most difficult problems we've dealt with in the last 12 months, not at Hinton Court, but in one of our sheltered schemes, was actually antisocial behaviour by an over 75-year-old. So it's not just a young old issue. You know, whatever age you are, if you cause problems in a scheme because of the way they're designed, so they're very inward looking, that affects everybody. Just picking up on the fences, I can only apologise. And before I leave today, or email me on my email, remind me of the exact addresses, and Mark and I will look at it again. I think, as I said 2 years ago, I'm not promising off-road parking because that requires all sorts of permissions with county council and costs to their adopted highway standards. But we shouldn't have fences with nails that might, and I said that 2 years ago, and I can only apologise, I'm saying it today.
Thank you. I'm just going to say to members around the table that if you have a complaint on specific issues, I think forward it on to LHP like I've done. I must say I've dealt with Mark on a few issues, and he's been very thorough and very quick, and also one of his good staff members there. If you don't get the follow-up or you don't get the response you want, follow it up, because it's up to you to follow up. I mean, they must get thousands of requests every day going into that office for this and that and the other. So, you know, I don't want to take individual issues tonight, because that's not what we're doing here. And I think if we're not careful, we'll end up talking about everybody and everything under the sun. So let's stop talking about individual cases. If you've got issues currently, send it to these guys on an email, follow it up with them, and make sure that they get it done on time. Okay, thank you very much. Move on to Councillor Ghosh.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the information. You mentioned about augmented reality. So if there are different setup of the properties, how you deal with it? And can we use the augmented reality to get complaints like overgrown grass and something like that?
So in terms of can we do it now? No. If we were to merge with Ongo, they have that technology built into their call handling centres, so it records the augmented reality and allows that to be used as a two-way tool. I don't see any reason why the same system wouldn't apply to ward members. At the end of the day, it's a digital transaction from you to us, whether that's a customer or a ward member. We deal with all our customers, all of our requests in exactly the same process. The only difference with ward members and MPs is they have a direct line through to the team that deals with it. So you, whilst a tenant of ours who makes a complaint will come through, and you'll see on average their complaints are dealt with within 10 days. You have the privilege of getting your complaints dealt with in 3 days. Now, we don't want that to become the route for every complaint, because otherwise you'd be swamped. But the idea is that you're wise enough to know, as ward councillors, what you really need to bring to our attention, because we've clearly missed something or made a mistake. If we end up with everything coming through that route, then you'll be getting responses in 10 days, because that'll just be where everything is. It works well. Will augmented reality help with that? Probably would. I mean, going back to the ivy on the fence, actually being able to see that in real time rather than a photo of what looks like a good fence with ivy on it, actually the councillor snipping away at it and showing that the thing's falling down gives it a very real context and allows us to act. And I know that's a relatively trivial example, but sometimes you deal with quite very serious issues on your constituents' behalf.
Thank you, Murray. No comeback? No. Okay, right. We're going to Councillor Drayton.
Yes, mine's health and safety. You know, when you cut the grasses in the parks, do you have anybody go around picking bottles up and cans up and any kind of debris on the floor?
So the straight answer is they should.
Well,
I'd refer to my colleague's earlier answer that we've ended up issuing a performance notice for underperformance. They absolutely should not be. You know, it's bad enough, as we've mentioned earlier, that sometimes the grass gets too long and we end up with clumps of grass going around. Absolutely should not be litter, bits of tin can, and God forbid, bits of glass whizzing around. That's not good for the person running the machine. It's not good for the machine, and it's absolutely awful for people using a park or their dogs.
Well, I can assure you that it does happen, because I've witnessed it.
And councillor, I can only say what we've said before. If you see something like that, please let us know, because if we don't know in that moment, you know, it's very easy for somebody to say, "Oh, that wasn't us." But if you saw it, let us know, because then Mark or I can pick that straight up with the contractors.
Okay.
Yes, if you see something, report it straight away. Right, I'm going to take 2 or 3 more questions and that's it. So next person is Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, my question really is to Murray. Do you see a role for CCTV? Because, of course, in the past, when it's Mayflower, for instance, Mayflower had an arrangement with Boston Borough Council to provide CCTV cover, and actually contributed significantly to the budget, which was enabled CCTV to be operational. If you've got a problem with antisocial behaviour, CCTV can be very useful. Now, in some estates, or well, I represent West Ward as such, lots of people have doorbell, setups and so on, and many have, of course, CCTV. So there's a lot of it around. It's probably less so, perhaps, for the areas that you deal with. Perhaps you haven't got the means to be able to fund the CCTV in the same way. So perhaps have you considered augmenting or supporting your residents by installing some form of CCTV?
Thank you, Councillor. We do use CCTV on the basis where we use it for gathering evidence as and when we get complaints. So where we're unable to clearly define what's going on, we will use working with the police often, or even our own equipment. We will install CCTV with the consent of the customer, or if we've got empty properties, we will put it in there just in the best vantage point available to us to capture some of this and start documenting it as evidence. So we wouldn't necessarily look to installing it across our whole estate, but we would certainly, and we do certainly use it to deal with some of the more serious antisocial behaviour.
Just back for 1 minute. So, I mean, would you consider coming back to Boston Borough Council? Because Boston Borough Council provided a very good service in the past, I think, for CCTV. It's more permanent, and it might be suitable for you to use. Worked very well in the past. You withdrew from it, didn't you? Yeah, I think we charge you £25,000 a year, I think, for that service. I can probably understand why you withdrew from that, but perhaps it might be worthwhile considering again. We have an excellent CCTV service. We cover all sorts of areas here, and it might be worthwhile you considering taking that on. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Woodley, for your salesmanship on the topic of CCTV cameras. Thank you very much. Thank you very much on that point. Can we move on now to Councillor Callum Butler?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for letting me speak, as I'm not a member of BTAC. My question relates to the rural ward of Old Leek and Wrangle, and in particular Mayflower Gardens. My first question is, how has it been allowed for Mayflower Gardens to be forgotten about, which was confirmed to me by the lady that did the walk around to me a couple of weeks ago in regard of maintenance. The contractors have forgotten to cut the grass at Mayflower Gardens for nearly 2 years. It got done once, I think, in the last 18 months, and it's poor. The residents pay their service charge and obviously weren't getting that service. And secondly, around Mayflower Gardens again, there's a dike between Mayflower Gardens and the Meadows, the sheltered accommodation. I understand and fully support that we need an area for wildlife and nature, but this area has been left to grow wild. There's brambles, nettles, thistles, you name it, filling this dike. Yeah, the answer is, well, we've given that aside for nature. Great. But when the residents either purchased or paid their 50% share of the homes on that scheme, or moved into the Meadows or signed up to Mayflower Gardens, were they aware that their view was going to be a 6-foot high wall of brambles? Because I wouldn't have been very happy if that was me personally.
Thank you for that. I think taking your second point first, if I may, the dike, and I'll need to take that away and look at the ownership. We know we've got quite a lot of schemes where dikes run at the rear of the site, and there's always a question over ownership. We often see that, you know, whether we own this side of the bank or halfway across the ditch. It's ridiculous, to be honest, but it's something that I'll gladly take away. The Mayflower Gardens and the grass cutting spec is quite intriguing to me, to be perfectly frank. And again, I'll need to take that away because all our skid sites are on GIS, which we provide to the contractor. So I'm surprised to hear it. But it's something I'll gladly take away and come back to you. I'll talk to you.
All I can say on that front is that obviously it's next to the Meadows. The Meadows was getting cut. However regular it was immaculate. And there was literally just a line just at the edge of there where Mayflower Gardens goes down, and that was up so high.
No, thank you for that. I'll come back to you if I may on that one.
Thank you, Councillor Buckler. I'm taking 2 more questions from Councillor Saviak and then Councillor Austin. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's kind of suggestion also. Would it be possible in the future when you have your LHP signs to have like QR codes? Because for these days we all have smartphones, yeah, and it would be probably easier for you to take action quicker, either that to use email addresses, yeah, just to put QR code when I'm coming with the phone and just report it. Yeah, that's all from me. Thanks.
Thank you. A really good suggestion, and we have been looking at doing that. So thank you for that.
You'll have realised.
Just press the button. Thank you very much, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I have very few LHP properties in my ward, but after the change of boundaries a few years ago, I took on Middlecott Close, which, as many of you will know, obviously is well, it's been there some time, and it's well, now 3 blocks of flats. But on that site, we have an excellent caretaker. Is this, you know, he really is. He's a brilliant bloke. But is that customary on other LHP properties? So the other ones I deal with are only in my county councillor situation, and they're the rural ones. So this is the only one I've got, other than the odd bungalow.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear, and I'll make sure Barry hears that. So thank you very much. Thank you. It's not a standard offer across the schemes, Barry, and his opposite number in the north. In the north, Dave. They work.
Excuse me. I think it's Kim, isn't it?
Well, Kim's the cleaner. Yeah. Yeah, so Kim's the cleaner. So, but we do have Barry based at Middlecote Court, who does some more caretaking, more of the sort of light repair works. So yeah, we have estate cleaners, scheme cleaners, as well as some contract cleaners, and we also have caretaker in Barry, or Baz as he likes to be called, who will operate sort of quite in a mobile way. Really, we're trying to move away from one dedicated resource on a scheme and provide that service more broadly. One of the positives of if indeed the merger goes through will be we will look at again a whole caretaking service across our areas of operation to enable us to do that low level repair, handyman sort of service, which is something we had some years ago and fell away simply because it was too costly.
Can I just come back slightly? The only thing that lets that estate down is those ground floor flats that have got the little gates, and some of them are immaculate what's behind them, and some of them are not.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and the difficulty we have there is their communal areas rather than the residents themselves. So those ground floor flats, they don't have that. That's a shared space. So some will take great pride in their areas, as many do across our communities and neighbourhoods, and some less so. But no, that's valuable feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Austin. Right, just one question from myself, or it's more an observation. When I was elected in May, I'm in the Stanley ward, and I'm in the same ward as Councillor Gilbert. Obviously, I'm going back to the grass cutting again now, and I'm concerned about the fact that the grass cutting there was, first of all, it was very high, the grass, before it got cut. And the second thing is, I was very disappointed to see mounds and mounds of grass rotting away. Now, if you want people to look after their area and their neighbourhood and to be clean and tidy, you've got to set the examples by taking all the surplus grass away and not leaving in mounds and mounds of rotting grass. Because all that does it to me, it encourages people then to use that as a dumping ground for putting all the rubbish there, because their attitude is, if that's there, well, I can just chuck anything else there. And I think for the purpose of the environment, for the purpose of the quality of your organisation, the purpose of this council not being blamed for not doing what it should do, we need to have those grass cuttings taken away, I believe, so that the area looks clean, tidy, fresh, and people will not use it as a dumping ground. And I walked that Stanley ward for quite a few weeks, and I had a lot of complaints when I got elected, and so did Councillor Gilbert. And I tell you what, I know more about grass cutting than I do about anything else in my 4 or 5 months as a councillor here. So can that sort of be done and dealt with? Because I think that would help a lot. Thank you.
Chair, it's a very good point. People who are experts in grass cutting tell me that if you cut the grass when it's short, that it mulches into the grass, and therefore you don't need to take away the grass cuttings. If you leave it till it's long and you cut it then, you get the technical description, mounds of rotting grass. The answer should be cut it more often so it mulches away, because if you have to take grass away, it becomes extremely expensive, because you've got to take it somewhere, you've got to transport it, you've then got to dispose of it either into landfill, which is a very expensive thing to do, or you've got to have some facility to compost it and then dispose of that. That is, and we have asked tenants twice in my career in Boston whether they want that service. And twice they have said, no, they don't, because they're not prepared to pay that cost. Our job, I think, Chair, is to make sure we cut it properly at the right time so that it mulches properly and isn't left in mounds.
And I think, if you don't mind me saying, I think that ought to be communicated from your organisation to residents so they understand fully why you're doing what you're doing. Because I got the impression from talking to the residents when I was elected that nobody seemed to be interested at all about the problems they've got. And I'm thinking about their area and their environment. As I say, it's very important to me that the place looks clean and tidy.
Chair, and we will take that away, and before the next grass cutting season, whenever that is, with the way things rain and heat is at the moment, we will endeavour to get better communication out so that you as ward councillors and the tenants that we serve better understand the approach we're taking and can hold us to account if we don't deliver to that standard.
And certainly, Murray, we will hold you to account if you don't deliver. Simple as that. Can I thank our three guests this evening from Lincolnshire Housing Partnership, Mr. Murray MacDonald, the Chief Executive, Mr. Anthony Reid, the Chairman, and Mr. Mark Coupland, the Executive Director for Customers. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. It's been very interesting, very enlightening, and we do appreciate you coming here tonight and talking us through the plans and developments for the organisation and how you're going to remedy all our problems. Have a nice evening, safe journey home, and thank you very much. Thank you. I can just remind councillors, if they've got any issues with LHP, don't forget to drop them a line straight away and follow it up to make sure they do what they need to do. Thank you very much. We'll just have a couple of minutes break so you can just go nip to the loo and do anything else you want to do. Thank you. Okay. Look at it as well. Go on home. You look like you've had a good day, a long day. Go on. Yes, we will. Okay. We'll have a couple of minutes break, that's all. That went all right, is it?
Yeah. I'm just clock watching for the first time.
Don't you worry, you're all right. I'm conscious. I'm conscious of it. I'm conscious of it.
Do you know,
Thanks, Mark. Enjoyed it.
you know, my mum lives in Wigan Court and she's 90.
Thanks, Murray. God bless. Thanks, Murray. Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah, my mum's she's the longest resident in Wigan Court. And
Right, welcome back and for that little comfort break. We go on to item 3. The final report this evening is the Boston Town Centre Strategy and Action Plan for 2023 to 27. It's on page 13 of the agenda, and this will be represented by, in a moment, by a portfolio holder, Councillor Broughton, who is supported by John Leach, our Deputy Chair, Chief Executive for Communities. I'd just like to say that I'm on the sort of steering committee of this group, strategy group, and I represent BTAC. I'm going to ask Councillor Broughton to actually say to do his presentation, and I'll have a few words afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to all you fellow councillors. This draft town centre strategy report and action plan covers a period 2023 to 27. The strategy provides a vision and objectives along with 70 actions that cover 4 themes. These themes are clean and safe, open for business, culture, heritage and events, and also transformation. In developing this piece of work, we're committed to working in partnership with residents, businesses, communities and partners, including working very closely, as the Chairman said, with BTAC, who has been involved throughout the process to revitalise our high street and the surrounding public realm. Making our town centre a place to once again be proud of, a place recognised for its great heritage, and a place to be cherished by its diverse communities to work, live and enjoy leisure in. It is vital that this piece of work is shaped by the community and local businesses, and to that end we welcome your comments, opinions and ideas. We have 8 points to work through. We will talk about the town centre strategy and the reasons behind it, the characteristics of our town, look at the draft vision and the key objectives of the strategy, how the town itself is managed. We will also look at the challenges we are facing, which I'm sure we're all too familiar with, but also the opportunities we have going forward, and also measuring the success of the strategy, which is a key part going forward, and also how the strategy is being shaped and the next steps and recommendations. So what is a town centre strategy? So why is a town centre strategy? As I've already said, Boston Town Centre is a key social and economic hub and a key retail centre for the local community. It's also a place we can offer culture, heritage and leisure, and a great place to hold events of all descriptions. It's also important to be able to access both public and private services, and it's also a big employment and business centre. It's also important it has a good transport options, whether this is by foot, bicycle, public transport or your car, and also what is the public perception of the town centre. We want to maximise everything a town centre should be for our residents, businesses and visitors coming to and using our great town. It's important we have your views and opinions on achieving these plans. As you can see, the next slide, the red area is what the area we're discussing. We've included Central Park. It is a main feature in the area, and although not a business, is vital in holding events throughout the year, as well as a place families and friends can meet up and enjoy their social time together. As you'll see, also included are areas either side of the river, and also the key transport areas, including the train and bus stations. I'm proud to call myself a lifelong Bostonian, and I know this town well. It has an historic centre with iconic locations, for example, Boston Stump and the Guildhall, as well as 164 listed buildings, as well as our links to Pilgrim Fathers. All are great visitor assets. One of our aims is to start talking Boston up more instead of down. Promote the good things we have in our town, like what I've just mentioned, and get visitors coming to our area. I'm not sitting here now saying there's no issues in the town. We all know there is. But we have to start playing to our strengths, promote the good side of the town while continually improving the areas and issues along the way. Boston has a market which, again, like throughout the country, has struggled since COVID-19 and with the rise of online shopping. But we have plans in this strategy to improve and create new ideas going forward to improve footfall and visitors to our town, which will not only be good for the market traders, but the retail businesses too. Just yesterday, we had a new store join the market on a permanent basis and welcome back the return of the butcher's store. Ideas such as the teenage market, which is growing month by month, and the introduction going forward of a farmers and makers market. Also the 900-year anniversary in 2025. All these things we are confident will bring greater trade and footfall into our town. We have spoken to cabinet members, officers and partners about the vision I and the administration have for Boston Town Centre. On the screen, these are some of the things which arose from them discussions. For example, clean and safe, inviting, food culture, friendly community. However, this is not an exhaustive list, and your ideas and opinions, what could be added, again, will be welcome. From the comments, the vision is this. Boston Town Centre will be known to be a place that brings communities together to enjoy quality public realm and open spaces that magnify the national heritage of the town while supporting a vibrant retail and hospitality experience. We have 7 key strategic objectives, as this screen shows. I'm not going to read them out word for word as they are in your pack, which I'm sure you've all read pre-meeting. But briefly, include a clean, tidy place, a place to feel safe, a place that businesses have a chance to thrive, an entertainment culture and event space which can build better community relationships, which is so important in a town which has many different cultures like ours, an easy access town centre, and for everyone to work and live effectively, including residents, businesses, and also some of our great volunteer sectors. For example, the Wombles, the Men's Shed, and Boston in Bloom, who I can just congratulate on once again winning gold for the town this past week. All these volunteer sectors and others are all great for this town. On your screen there, you can see the resources we currently have in our town for cleaning, as well as envirocrime and fly SWAT teams. These operatives, in my opinion, go undetected by a lot of residents, as a lot of the time, as many of these working, most of our residents may still be in bed. A lot of these starting at 4:30 and 5 in the morning. In my opinion, they deserve serious praise for the hard work and dedication they put into their jobs. This next slide just shows some of the key jobs that these people do. And like I say, I think they need more recognition than what they actually get credit for. Obviously, we've got challenges we currently face. The council, as we all know, have limited resources, but these challenges are not simply down to just us at the council. We're working closely with the police, health sectors, as well as voluntary and community sectors, plus local businesses to achieve a more positive future for Boston. We all know we have empty shops, and again, this hasn't been helped by COVID or online shopping, but we need to come up with new initiatives to attract new businesses to the town, and our economic growth and other departments in our council are working hard on this. Also, Boston's had some very bad press over the last few years, which again is a challenge. And last Christmas, we've been ridiculed both locally and nationally over our lack of Christmas. But I can sit here confident that this year will be spoken about for all the right reasons. This Christmas, with our White Christmas themed 4-day event, and also a real Christmas tree, which our town is always accustomed to having. Yes, we have challenges, but going forward, we have great opportunities to turn around the fortunes of our town. We've been successful in getting community bids and continue looking at bringing funds into the town. We're also listening to residents and businesses and looking to bring different events and activities into our town to increase footfall and get visitors coming back into Boston. Also to utilise feedback from our Growth Directorate team at Boston Borough Council regarding the High Street Task Force Plan, and also more potential funding from the Levelling Up Partnership. The document centres around 4 main themes: clean and safe, open for business, events and activities, and also transformation, which is important in recognising that nothing stands still. Nothing stays the same, and to understand this in following our vision for the success of our town. Page 35 of your report presents over our 70 actions, which you can see on the next 2 slides, are broken down into 4 thematic areas. But again, I will not go through them all, as it's all in your report. Of course, which is very important in measuring the success of this strategy, is it's about delivering our 70 actions and potentially more as the journey continues. Whether our timescales are achievable, which we feel they are, as we don't want things to just slowly grind on. It's a working live document, and we want to achieve what we set out to do. It's about looking at key performance indicators like footfall data, car parking access, the retail sector and how they are performing, and also how the residents and businesses feel, as well as how we are performing economically. The strategy has been led through a steering group by myself and supported by Councillor Pierpoint, as he stated earlier, recognise the important role that BTAC will play in this, as well as senior officers from various departments in the council who have sat around the meeting table and I would like to say have listened to what our visions and ideas were, gone away, worked very hard on this strategy document. I'd also personally like to thank John Leach on the left for his role in overseeing it all. As you can see, the timescales are set out on the screen for you. We're currently in consultation mode from the 15th of September to the 15th of October. And only yesterday we was on Boston Market, where it was the best interaction we've had from a market stall with lots of opinions and thoughts, which we welcomed. We also have meetings scheduled on the 11th of October with the market traders and also on the 12th of October with town centre businesses and organisations. Also, social media, we had a 24-hour poll last week, and in this time we had over 1,500 responses. So we are very confident that people of Boston want this strategy as much as we do. We're looking to put this forward to Cabinet on the 25th of October, and we would like to hear your views, opinions on this presentation, and if John Leach has got anything else he'd like to add.
Thank you, Councillor Broughton. John, anything from you?
No, nothing, Chair. Thank you.
Right, before we just take the questions, I'd just like to thank Councillor Broughton for that presentation. I did say at the Ordnance and Governance meeting on Monday that I was very honoured and privileged and very happy that Councillor Broughton got a lot of dedication and passion for Boston Town Centre and all the things he's doing. And I've never seen anybody work so hard in making sure that people know that Boston's going to be changing, moving forward. There's going to be new developments. A 4-day Christmas event. I've never heard of that one before. That's even brilliant. So, Councillor Broughton, thank you very much on behalf of everybody at BTAC for all the hard work you've done so far. I'd like to also thank John Leach for the strategy document, working with Councillor Broughton, which is very visionary. There's a lot of developments there, a lot of opportunities for this town to grow and develop and prosper. So I'd like to thank you both for those things there. For those people who was, for those members of the committee who was at the corporate and community meeting, we've been through this document already, so I don't really want to go over duplicate questions. I'm looking for new questions from BTAC members, if you know, otherwise we could be here all evening, because you've had the feedback from corporate and community committee. So any BTAC members, let's see who we're going to start with. Start with Councillor Danny. You want to, off you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be very brief. That may take 15 minutes. Oh, sorry about that. I just really, I'm very pleased, and I will support, Councillor, Broughton and anything, because I am in the town 6 days a week, and I know what's going on and the perception of people. There is one thing I will inform you now. I had a meeting with Richard Davis for 1 hour a couple of weeks ago. So we're gonna bring a new bicycle racks in the town. Better one, because we have just this blue metal which is bended, which is not good. So it's the county, they will do that. Also, I'm pushing for 2 shelters for bus stops by the 5 lamps. So we're gonna consult about that probably this coming week. They're gonna come and see me with some models so we can go from there. Because when it rains, our Bostonians, especially the elderly people and people who use the bus, they have nowhere to go. They have to stand by savers. They have to run between. So that's in course. So that's I can assure you it will happen. The thing which is I want to mention to you, and it's upsetting, it happens today. I had some people from Sheffield. They want to go to the stamp and it was closed. It's the same thing happening with the Guildhall. We have to open the Guildhall as long as we can, because people, they like to go and see it. It's always closed. And it has been mentioned before, to the lack of probably finance, we cannot have somebody permanent there, but we should open it all the time, because when you send people, and I talk about the history of the Guildhall and the Pilgrim Fathers, and you talk a lot, just having a coffee, and you send them, they come back, say, oh, it's closed. It's very sad to hear that. We should open it. It's our gem in the town, and it's good to make some money out of it or whatever if people will charge, but it should be open. Thank you, but I will support you in anything to do, and I'm here to support. And don't forget, we have a plastic tree we bought last year. I don't know what happened to it.
That will be getting cited as well, but
Just to tell you, I
Yes.
wasn't in the process or accepting it. I was against it, but however, it's somewhere.
the plastic tree will still be getting cited, but we do have a real, just addressing them points. Obviously, I welcome bicycle racks and also 2 new bus shelters near the 5 lamps. I totally agree with what you're saying when it rains, which it does quite often in Boston. They do need somewhere to go. Reference to Stump, obviously, if they have their own events or funerals or things like that, I can understand why the Stump's closed. Maybe Phil can enlighten us a bit more on the Guildhall.
Yeah, in terms of the Guildhall is operated under the budget that was agreed at council some time ago. There is a national portfolio organisation bid that was successful for East Lindsey, and the Guildhall will be one of the hubs, along with Astley Hall and Gardens in South Holland. So the opportunities to look at how we can develop that going forward will be looked at over the coming months.
John.
Thank you very much, Chair. I mean, the purpose of the consultation is exactly that, to get those kind of views and considerations. What's important to people is what we want to hear. And if that's something that is really important to people, then quite rightly it's part of the due consideration of this process. But also, for example, for the local authority, the budget setting process. If it's something that really resonates as important, then in terms of setting our priorities, we need to consider it as part of the budget setting process. So thank you very much for your comment. I'm really pleased that you've also brought forward comments relating to the county council, I believe. So thank you. Yeah.
I can assure you that I fight for Boston as much as I can, and anybody can go and watch the public protection and what I say about Boston. Boston is in my heart. I live here. It's my home, and I make it my home, and I will fight for it. And as I say, I will support any decision made as long as we achieve something for Boston, and that's what we need.
No, that's really helpful, and indeed we've got a meeting with the Chief Executive of the County Council regarding this strategy as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. Councillor Woodliff.
Not the microphone out of line there. Well, I've got a number of thoughts about this really, and it is about the entertainment side of things really, because if I look through the document, it takes me a long time to find Blackfriars. I think it's page 61 on our pack or 41 in the information pack, and then I don't think people quite understand what Blackfriars does. I mean, you can go to the Guildhall, you walk around once, and that's it. I mean, if you go to Blackfriars, it's a repeating offer, basically. There's so much goes on at Blackfriars, and young people and so on, the stage thing, yeah, whatever it is. I'm not a thespian, I'm not really interested, but my wife is heavily involved in it. It's a wonderful, wonderful asset for this town, and it's hardly here. People think it's something to do with heritage, but it's not. It's a really, really important venue. It attracts people from outside who come into the town to go to the theatre, go to the performances and so on, and they're bringing money into the town when they do it. So that's one aspect. I haven't quite finished yet. Can I carry on? The other thing is, you don't mention the Glidodrome. Now, I know the Glidodrome is outside your little ring, just outside, yeah? That was a massive venue, wasn't it, Dale, in the past? You know, you can think back in the past, the people who came to that. Now, I'm not a Bostonian, I'm an Londoner, but my son is, my youngest son is heavily involved in the music business. And he says that it was a major venue for all the top groups, Elton John and all the top people used to come here and play there. It has a revolving stage, apparently, whatever that is. Yeah. So it is an iconic venue. Unfortunately, it's fallen on hard times. Some rumours about it's going to be knocked down, I think, and sold for housing or something. There'd be a disaster for this town if that was so, because that's an option we have there. We need to attract some for young people. I'm sure that many people like to go around the Stump once. I'm sure many people like to go around the Guildhall once, but they might want to go to the Glidocombe again and again and again and again. And it offers something that young people themselves might be interested in doing, in going to see. Yeah, there is a problem with the management of that place. That's what my son says again. But well, we're on live, aren't we? I better be careful. Essentially, I better be careful about that.
But
Councillor Woodliff, I think you've got your point now.
Well, that's those. It's just those two, yeah. And of course, then there's the football clubs. Now, it's a pity about the football club being just slightly out of town. But again, it's a major asset, a major draw for this town. People who come here to watch the football match may well go into town to have a meal and so on. It's an attraction in. It's something to bring people into the town to make the town more profitable and more attractive. And then there's one other club, which I'm going to mention, and then it'll be the last. Sorry, okay, Chairman, I'll stop at that point. It's a tennis club. Now, I mean, I don't play tennis. I hate the game. I don't play football. Can't stand it. I'm not a thespian, so I'm not interested in acting. And I don't play a musical instrument. So logically, I don't have any link to these things, except I know that these things are real assets. And if we promote them, that's how we're going to rejuvenate the town. It's not going to be through shops, because people shop online now. It's going to be through entertainment. And entertainment and activities are the thing we need to base our strategy on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Woodley.
Okay, right.
Very
I've done my
kind
best
of you.
anyway. I've sold my pitch. Yeah.
Councillor Broughton, do you want to come back, or do you want to comment or not, or just taking feedback? It's up to you. So John,
I'm happy to come back. Really helpful comments. You're quite right. In the strategy itself, there are some single statements. Beneath those single statements are specific plans, much more detail. It's not possible within the strategy to go into, for example, lots of detail around Blackfriars, because it's not a strategy about Blackfriars. But believe me, where things are mentioned, there are plans beneath that with greater detail to support taking initiatives forward. That's one aspect. And I think you make a really helpful point about some of the other kind of community assets around the town that draw people into the locality and therefore then come into town as a consequence. Yeah, I've seen myself, the Glider Drome was a great venue, certainly in the past, lots of international stars coming along to the Glider Drome. So that's great heritage as well associated with the place. Again, football, great asset, tennis club as well, great asset. So really helpful to have those comments, and we'll look to see how we can build them in. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Let me go on to Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was first elected to this borough in 2007, and in 2007 we'd recently taken possession of a document, a very expensive document by some consultants called Tribal that were exploring issues of town centre regeneration. You probably remember it yourself. And it said lots of stuff, really, lots of good stuff. One thing that stuck in my mind at that time about that report was they sort of drew a line sort of 5 miles around the centre of Boston, or maybe slightly further afield, 6-7 miles outside from the centre of Boston. And they concluded that a lot of the space that was filled within that circle was water and fields. And so one of the observations that they made was that the population, the footfall, if you like, within the town centre was fairly limited, given that natural geography. Having said that, I think the number of people living in the town centre, whilst it may have increased, I think the economic clout that the people now have who live in the town centre may have decreased. I've got no figures to confirm that. But I think it's something that needs to be taken into consideration. So for me, part of any strategy that's intending to improve the economics of the town centre have to involve people, and that has to involve economics. It has to involve the spending power of the people that live here. That may be trying to work to increase wages in the town centre, or it may be trying to I've just lost my point. Increase wages, or it may be. I'll come back to that point. I've forgotten it basically. So the other thing, the references to a vision. Can I just ask very neatly, what is the vision? Because when I did sort of management, the vision was something you could sum up in a couple of words. Back in the days of Tribal, I suggested that the vision for Boston should be something along the lines of waterways and gardens, something that actually speaks of the town, something that people can identify with. Slightly woollier kind of descriptions apply to any town. I mean, a great place to live. Well, who's going to say that their town isn't a great place to live? They're going to say every Slough is probably a great place to live. But Boston needs to say something about itself, something that actually captures and in the mind's eye, gives somebody a sense of what Boston is about as a place. In relation to some other specifics here, clean and tidy. We have a seagull problem. We have a pigeon problem. we have a chewing gum problem. I've walked down Dolphin Lane today, and it's pockmarked with chewing gum. You know, the lane's only been repaved in the last, say, 2 or 3 months, maybe in the last week or so. They've started to conclude the work. It's not a good look. It doesn't look great. So we need to think about something like that as part of a town centre strategy. Absolutely, things like bike parks and bus shelters. But if the town actually looks tatty, there's pigeons everywhere, there's pigeon mess everywhere. Again, it has a detrimental effect on the town. The other thing I suggest as well, which might be something that the portfolio holder would like to consider, is reaching out to landlords, particularly landlords of HMOs, because the private sector accommodation in Boston has a very significant impact on the overall appearance of the town centre. So you can have a nice sort of unique building like Blackfriars or the Stump or the Guildhall, but actually if you're walking down Station Street and all the bricks are flaking and there's bins outside the houses on the streets, it isn't a good look. And I think I think the strategy needs to include those areas as well. So for me, it's a great opportunity to look at this issue again. I'm absolutely foursquare behind it. I'll give any support I can to whoever wants that support in terms of what's going on in here. But just those additional comments about the economics, and maybe the final point was getting people living in the town. That was it. Yeah. So either driving up the wages in the town centre or actually getting more people living in the town centre, because we have to have more disposable income being spent in the town centre, because to me, that's what's changed over the last 30 or 40 years. There's a lot there. I'll shut up now.
Oh, Councillor Gilbert, thank you very much.
I'd just like to address a couple of things, and I'm sure John will back up some of the others as well. The vision part that you said, I think it's simple. Boston for everyone. I think that's what we're trying to drive forward. All the different communities, cultures, we want Boston to be for everybody. Regarding the cleaning, the pigeon issues, the seagulls, the chewing gum, that is actually in the strategy under the deep clean of the town. So that part is covered with that. Is there something you want to add, John?
John.
Just
sorry, getting rid of the pigeons, because I think what I'm suggesting is that we maybe start looking at getting rid of them rather than just clearing up after them.
Well, just to support Councillor Broughton, really, in terms of a vision, yeah, we've come up with an expression of what people have said to us in terms of what people believe the vision to be. So that's one aspect to it. But on the front of the document itself, it sums things up in just a few words, which I think was your aspiration: a town centre for everyone. And it's there to debate, should you choose a different sort of vision associated with the town centre.
Well,
those are
if I can go words. Yeah, if I can go back to my original point, in 2007, we had a bit of a competition with the borough, and we were all putting forward suggestions for a vision for the town and the borough. And I put down waterways and gardens, because to me, we have waterways and we could spend some time developing the gardens. We've got Bloom now, which we didn't have before. I know that there's a couple of environmental groups that are looking to develop some of the redundant areas of ground within the borough, within the town centre itself. So maybe the vision of gardens is beginning to be realised. And then what we need to perhaps think about doing is broadening out the scope of this to include the waterways that fall outside the town centre, in the same way we ought to include the things that fall outside the town centre, like Blackfriars and the football stadium, etc., etc. Bring the whole borough in, if you like, involved in this process, and start working with our partners like the drainage boards and Anglian Water to improve the appearance of the waterways, because that would be a real draw into the borough from elsewhere.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. This is a town centre strategy. We're talking about, not a borough strategy. Let me finish. And we've got to focus on one area to start with. I see this document as the starting point of the way forward. What happened in the past in 2007, 2011, we can't count for that. That's been and gone. These guys here have put a strategy together to take this town forward. You can't think of everything in strategy terms. I'm sure every item we've discussed tonight will be made note of by Councillor Broughton and by John, and that'll be included as part of the strategy going forward. We can talk about everything and anything, but I don't want to. So we'll move on, and I'll ask Councillor Austin for your question.
I don't know how much is questions and how much is comments. one of the big bugbears of my husband's life over the last couple of years was that the guild, because the town is open for visitors as well as residents, and the Guildhall is closed every time there's a wedding. Now, I know the borough wants the income, but what are we losing as a result that people can't visit really our most historic building, plus the fact that it's not open every day. And if you only happen to come, on a Monday or whatever it is, you don't want to find things closed. Now, linking what Councillor Woodliff was talking about, Blackfriars, Guildhall, Bridal House, some Newson Music Centre, we should be pushing this idea of a cultural quarter. It's being talked about a lot, but it needs pushing.
Can I say about the Guildhall? We've already had an answer from Phil Perry about the Guildhall and the costing situation, implications of budgets and things like that. So I think that one's already been answered, I believe.
Just to clarify as well, in the actual strategy, there is quite a big section on culture as well. So if you read through it, you'll find the culture section in it as well.
May I just add one thing? I'm going to say it now because it's so fresh in my mind. Cycling in this town centre. I walked, for anyone's information, I walked from the Blanket Memorial Hall over the footbridge towards Lincoln Lane. And other people as well, we were nearly run down by idiots on bikes with other idiots on their handlebars. Can we get support from the police or somebody to stop this sort of behaviour? It is dangerous.
We've got the police coming to the next BTAC in November, Councillor Austin, and I think that's one of the times we can be going into great detail with them. I think tonight's not the time and place for that. Right, I'm not taking any more questions now. No, I think we've done in. Well, very briefly then, because I'm going to move on.
I suggested, and I think Mr. Phil Perry, you may remember that, I went to Louth and they have a small chewing gum bins in pink because you can recycle the bins. They don't cost much. I did suggest it before, but nothing has been done. They are pink. You put them in a wall, and people, when they take their chewing gum, they put them in because you can recycle the chewing gum. They are made out of plastic. So it's a recyclable matter, and you can have small bins. They don't cost much to stick them, and they can empty them. That's a suggestion. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Very nice of you.
And it's very kind of you to bring that up. The consultation runs to the 15th of October. Any other comments or any other things you'd like to discuss? Councillor Broughton and John Leach will take those from you outside of this meeting. And we've got a few more weeks to pass on any of our thoughts and ideas to these two gentlemen. Can I thank you both for coming along to the meeting tonight and presenting the strategy. It's a very strong one, it's a very good one, and there's lots of other things I'm sure you're going to take away from this meeting today. And I thank all our members around the table here for all the questions. Right, the recommendation is BTAC committee considers the draft strategy to feedback as appropriate to help in the development of the document to be considered by Cabinet. Are you all in favour of that? Here, here, well done, thank you very much. The final item this evening is our work programme for the year. It's on page 33, and I'm going to ask Phil Perry to talk us through it, please.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Pearport just mentioned earlier, Lincolnshire Police are attending the next meeting on the 16th of November. And as with this evening, could you please submit any questions you have to Karen by the 25th of October? Please ensure that, so this is to be able to ensure that detailed responses can be provided. Okay, and there's also a change to the programme on the agenda. There'll now also be a sort of a finance update report for information at the next meeting as well. And just to please note that on the 8th of February, just in addition to the agenda, will be a visit by Neil Kempster, who's the chair of the Boston Town Deal Board, to present on the progress of the Town Deal projects. Okay, and that concludes the.
Thank you. Yes, the February the 8th will be Neil Kempster, the chair of Boston Town Deal. He'll be bringing the presentation to this committee, and he'll be bringing us up to date with all the developments that's happened from right up now to next February. So don't forget in your diary. November meeting, I believe, is going to be a very big one because there's a lot on the agenda. So it's going to be quite a long meeting. We'll try and make it very interesting and to the point. We've got the police there, and I'm sure there'll be lots of things happening there. Can I thank you all for attending the committee today?